I was born and raised here in Seattle, Washington. I lived in Kent, Washington most of my life. I graduated from Kent Meridian High School in '83. In '85, I went and moved to Omaha, Nebraska. I stayed there. I was married for about 7.5 years. I stayed there because it was like God just gave me everything I needed there. I had 5 kids at that time. I had just got divorced again. And I used to really pray, Lord, I just want someplace I can raise kids. Someplace that's not too fast, someplace I don't have to really worry about them, someplace they can have a good home upbringing. That was Omaha. Omaha is the yes ma'am, no sir state, as I call it. I taught my kids the etiquettes of being in private school and formal dancing. I mean, it's just so much more there than it ever was here for me. Let's see. At 7 years old, my mom met a guy that she brought into our family, and he used to molest me for 10 years. At 17, he finally went to jail because he molested one of my little sisters. At 18, I moved out and I got married for the first time and had a little girl. To this day, my sisters do not like me. They tell me that I was the mother, that I have deserted them when I should have been there for them. The only excuse I have is, I'm sorry, I had to move on with my own life. I'm sorry. At 23, I had 2 little girls and a boyfriend that I had for 7.5 years that I was married to for 4 days. 4 days later, I was no longer married. I was the actually first time I was ever really, really homeless that I can really remember in my life. Once before I was 8 years old. And the only reason I remember that is because, like she was saying, when you've been through tragedy and you've been through so much, there's things that either you, your mind, or God doesn't want you to remember. So what I'm finding out is there's a lot missing in my life from 7 till about 35. I live my life through stories from my kids and stories from my parents. I came here because my mom got sick, and I had prayed and I said, Lord, if I go back home and I don't have a job and no way to support me or my kids, I'll leave. I went back home. After being here for shortly 2 weeks, when my mom was sick, I went back home. I thought I had all my paperwork and everything filled out. Had already sent that back to my job. Went in, pushed my finger on the thing, went on in, and was stopped by a manager saying, what are you doing here? Huh? What do you mean, what am I doing here? This is my job. This is where I work. You were fired the other day. And I was just like, oh, okay. Okay. And I walked back out to a lot of people that I knew goodbye, because I had been there for 2.5 years. And got to know a lot of people and had a lot of friends. And I moved here. Came up here with about $3,000 in my pocket to spend about $2,000 of that on the way up here because my truck broke down. Spent one night in South Dakota, sleeping in my truck with my 2 grandkids and my $3. Trying to get up here, thinking, okay, I'm still pretty okay. I have about $1,300 to find out I had about $300 left. Not realizing how much gas I had used because my truck had broke down. I stayed with my sister in Lake City for about a month. It was like, she said, Section 8 housing, you got to leave, because if not, she would lose her house. And then came back, and my kids were there with me, and it was just like 9 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Nobody had any place to sleep, no laying on top of each other. it was just too much. I moved from there, then lived with my brother over here in Tukwila, and that's how I got to Tukwila. I stayed with him for a while, and he said, okay, come August, I need you to move. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, what happened? We were just talking about getting a 2-bedroom apartment together, and no, I decided I don't like living with you. Okay. So I left there and spent darn near everything I made just so that me and my 2 girls would have a hotel room to sleep in night after night. When I wasn't doing that, I spent everything else I had to put in gas to go from Kent to Ballard, because that's where I work. By the grace of God, and only by God's grace, I made it through. I sit back now and go, Lord, how did I make it through? I didn't have gas money, really. After paying a hotel bill, I ended up paying $2,300 in 1 month. I said, Lord, if I could pay $2,300 in a month, there has to be a place for me to live. There has to be. And there wasn't. Because either you have to make 3 times as much rent around here. Most of the 2 bedrooms around here range anywhere from $1,250 to $1,700. I am homeless again because I used to live right over here off of 160th. Well, we got bought out, and the apartment complex decided that us who lived there month to month was better for them to kick us out so they could remodel their apartments than move us into other apartments. And my brother was the maintenance guy there, had been the maintenance guy there for 15 years to end up with no job and no place to live because they also gave him free housing living there. And I'm just finding out that it's really hard to live in Washington. I used to laugh at people and joke around and say, you can't drink here, you can't eat here, you can't live here. What is there to do here? Then God gave me ideas. I was going to one church that was a Seventh-day Adventist. No, she was a Jehovah's Witness church. No, she was a Jewish church. Bishop Jones. And like I said, I ended up moving up here with my brother. And I just walked past church by the side of the road one day and went in, not realizing that my church is a shelter. It's a recovery church for people who are addicts, who have been abused, who have been tossed to the world, basically. We're a non-denominational church. There is Jewish people in there, there's Seventh-day Adventists, there's Protestants, there's Baptists, there's, you name it, we have it. And we are multicultural. In that, I found peace. Because nobody was expecting me to be anything but me. They didn't know me. And to be honest, they could care less who I was, as long as I wasn't making a ruckus in the church. I went up and was prayed for because at that time, after I had to leave my brother's house, it was probably the first time I broke down and started crying and didn't want to be alive anymore. And I went through that once in Omaha, and I did it again here. And my daughter looked and said, Mama, we will not be like this always. God will provide. We will not be like this always. So I took everything I had and I made sure that 2 girls and 3 grandsons of mine have a place to live. My son stayed with his best friend. My other daughter lives with her boyfriend. I have another daughter who has moved back home to Omaha, who lives in a shelter. I now live in my car because my son gave me a car about 3 weeks ago. And like I said, I got put out my apartment. Me too. I went to go stay with my ex-husband who's made this big to-do. We're just friends. You do this, you do that. Pay my electricity bill and you can stay here. I stayed there for about a month and a half. And it was like, I just kept having this uneasy feeling, Lord, there has to be something more than this. I can't stay here. But I find peace in this car. I find safety in my car. I find God in my car. In that car, I have my own space. I have my own transportation. I have my own peace. And through all of this, God has allowed me to be a facilitator of a women's group at my church. And like I was going to tell you the story of when I first went to the church. I asked to be prayed for. I went up because we have different people who will pray for you in the front of our church. And I went up and I looked at the lady and her husband and I said, I want to be prayed for because I feel suicidal again. And she just looked at me and started crying. And I'm like, okay, well, what just happened? And her husband was like, thank you. And I'm like, huh? She's like, she thought she was the only person who felt that way. And I was like, what? No, sweetie, you're not alone. I said, just because we believe in God doesn't mean the world doesn't get us down. Just because we believe in God doesn't mean that sometimes we don't want to be here. And not just her, but there's a lot of women in my church that are hurting. And so I asked my pastor if I could start this group, and he had told me about a month and a half ago that I could. And it took me probably 4 months after him telling me that I could start it before I finally did. But like I tell my sisters, I started this group for me, not for y'all. I started it because I needed you more than you could ever need me. Even though I'm homeless and I sleep in a car, I have a family. I have people who care about me. We all do. My son calls me every day. Mom, how are you? What are you doing? Where are you? Why didn't you came to my house? My daughter does the same. But sometimes I realize we have to find our own peace and our own stability. And I've went through a lot. I tell people I have went through molestation, rape, homelessness, my daughter being burnt at 90% of her body when she was 5, my house catching on fire. Losing my brother, the only brother that I could talk to who actually believed in God. I lost him a year ago. Actually now 2 years, right before Christmas. But all I can say is through it all, God's always been there. He's always kept me as long as I would keep him first. As long as I keep him on my mind. And remember the promise I made to a 14-year-old at the time when she was 14 that I would, if she was woman enough to accept the fact that I would kill myself and tell her sisters and brothers why, and get them to understand even though I did it, I still love them. And I told her I'm woman enough to stay right here on this earth. That's my story.